It is time for the climax, where I can talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. It doesn't have to be science or tech related. As the rest of the show, I generally, other than, maybe important messages, I like to keep it science and tech related. I can talk about a book, a movie, whatever, video, and actually video. I am going to talk about a video this week. Now, the past couple weeks, I have been, discussing a lot of the larger theories that exist within perhaps, libertarian or ANCAP circles, 9/11, things like that. And, I don't want to make that a theme and that's what every climax is going to be about. But this week, I need to do one more. And this is very important that this gets done. This one right here. And the reason that it's important that it gets done is that because the social response, the reinforcement that I see for the theory that I am about to lay out for you is significant within liberty circles, within, or conspiracy, whatever phrase you want to use, within people that are interested in freedom, apparently. Thousands upon thousands of people have watched this video that I'm about to describe. There's lots of, I've seen lots of comments to the effect of, in various social media and all that, to the effect of the person that made this, hey, great job. Wow, that's really important. I'm, looking forward, or not looking forward, but I'm watching out for this and all this stuff. So, this video is made by Jeff Berwick. And he claims this to be the most important video he has ever made, or at least he said this may be anyway. And it is all about the Shemitah. And, oh boy. So let me lay out real fast. And if I have to extend this episode of Sovryn Tech a little bit, I'm going to, because I really want this information to be laid out. Okay. Let me explain a little bit, give you my personal history. For those that are new to Sovryn Tech and maybe don't know this, as I have described already in this episode, I was a veteran of the U.S. Army. I am ethnically Jewish. As I also said earlier in this show, I am an atheist. Please don't confuse me there, that just because I may have some knowledge of the Shemitah and, a lot of this stuff, that somehow, I am now religious or whatever. No. So I also have, as I call myself Dr. Brian Sovryn, I have a doctorate of divinity. I was a Christian for a part of my life. I was raised Jewish, but there was a part of my life where I was also Christian. My parents converted to that, and I became an atheist. And later on in my life, while in the military, I became a Christian again. And then, fortunately, I came back to my senses once I got out of there. And so, that's my whole, and I'm an anarchist. Okay. I am an unabashed anarchist. I don't really put any hyphens on that. But there it is. So that's where I'm coming from. Okay. And is that some kind of appeal to authority? That's up to you if you want to say that, because certainly the appeal to authority made in this video is that somehow Berwick called all these different economic collapses, which that in of itself is, okay, maybe he said something to that effect, but, you can always interpret things how you want later on, perhaps. Not going to get into that, but he is coming off as some degree of an economic authority. If you've listened to last week's episode, I talked about how so many actual very real economic calamities that have occurred have not been discussed by anybody in the liberty movement. So, if there's this great ability to predict, the worst of things, well, it's missed some of the biggest of all time. And arguably the ones that supposedly are claimed to be this terrible thing weren't that bad in the first place. So anyway, all that aside, this video about the Shemitah, and I'll put it in brief, is the notion that there is this, ritual, this religious ritual that started, within Judaism, that is pointing to, apparently it kind of predicted 9/11, and it pointed to the 2008, kind of financial collapse, which we're all still here, folks. And I still went to the mall the next day, but anyway, and then, now it's pointing to this terrible, something. And Berwick is very unclear as to what exactly is going to happen. There's not a lot of clarity. So what's the point of even predicting it? I don't know. But that on September 15th or sometime around there, 2015, like I guess maybe the guess is that the financial system is finally just going to completely collapse, which, disregarding the fact that has been said, not by Berwick, but by lots of people, particularly in libertarian circles or anarchist, ANCAP circles, has been said for the past 50 years, or even more, regardless of that, let's say that this is accurate. And so he's basing it upon, largely, there's this Jonathan Cahn, who he wrote a book a few years ago called The Harbinger. And he even wrote a follow-up book called The Mystery of the Shemitah, however you want to, lay that out there. Okay. You'll hear it pronounced a bunch of different ways, but Shemitah. The way that got, he laid out this whole big case that, September 11th, that the 9/11 was the start of, or because something wasn't, that was a judgment. And then because nothing was done about that judgment, that now something really bad is going to happen. Okay, come 2015 or come in the very near future, really, really terrible things are going to happen. And you have, this is from Leviticus 25. You can read it for yourself, but from the Old Testament, that's where it talks about the Shemitah, where every 7 years, debts need to be, forgiven. And there is an overall where you stop farming on the land to let the land kind of regroup in all of this. And so the idea goes is that, there's going to be this time where they need to reset all the debts. And that is a reference to the financial collapse of Wall Street and everything else come this September. So now Berwick, to his credit, at least says, hey, I could be wrong. Good. I'm glad you said that. But there's a problem overall. And that is that Jonathan Cahn is dead wrong in and of itself. Now, I will come from this because what they are, what his evidence is the Bible or the Torah. And what a lot of other people's evidence, comes from with, not just the Old Testament, but also the New Testament on a lot of this. A lot of people who are Christian are really big on this whole Harbinger thing. And you can go on YouTube and you can see a lot of Christian pastors talk about the Shemitah. And, so they're on board with this. So I want to debunk this whole notion based upon the document that the theory in and of itself is based upon. Okay. And so let's start off with the Shemitah itself, because the claim goes is that, every 7 years this has to happen. And it's still recognized in Israel today. That Berwick himself said that. And that's true. Okay. It is still recognized. It does still happen. And in fact, the government, the Israeli government exists outside of, Orthodox Judaism, largely because of the fact that they wouldn't want the government processes to have to shut down for the Shemitah. So, yes, it's true that it is still recognized. But here's the problem, is that biblically, and again, because it's not being based upon today's, recognition of the Shemitah, it's being based upon that this is some kind of grand prophecy that occurred, some kind of biblical thing to happen. So it should be based upon the biblical concept of the Shemitah, not necessarily, the conventional modern use. And there's the issue. There's issue number one, is that nobody can agree on how exactly the Shemitah was even, celebrated or observed. Was it on the 6th year, between the 6th and 7 years? Again, so it's every 7 years. Was it between the 6th and 7th year that you took the year off and you didn't plant? So that's one. So there, as far as being able to predict dates, that's largely impossible. Now, also, Berwick brings up the idea of what he calls a super Shemitah, and this is the idea of a Jubilee year, which is, 7 times, it's like every 7 of these, the number 7 is definitely popular in the Bible, and, where it's the number of perfection, the number of God and all this. And so, 7 times you end up with like every 49 years, it's a what they call a Jubilee year. And so now Berwick uses this really, really like sketchy, the fact that there's this, World Economic Conference or whatever that they're calling a Jubilee gathering, whatever the details are exactly behind on that. So he's like, they're using the word Jubilee, so this must be a Jubilee year. Well, the problem there, again, this is debunking the whole idea of the Shemitah itself. The problem there is that no one knows, first off, you cannot use, the Jubilee is not to be recognized if there's no Sanhedrin, which is the religious governing body of Judaism, which there hasn't been a Sanhedrin for a long, long time, over 1,000 years. Okay, there is no Sanhedrin. And you also have to have all 12 tribes of Israel to celebrate a Jubilee year or to observe a Jubilee year. And everybody, there's the lost 10 tribes. The 12 tribes aren't out there. They're not around to be observed. Now, if the claim is that there's a secret Sanhedrin and there's a secret, lost 10 tribes that have somehow been found, then you need to make that case for me to somehow accept the notion of a Shemitah or a Jubilee year. But that's not being done. And I'm not going to give you my email address so you can tell me. No, you need to lay out the facts first. If this is so, because he's talking about, and I've heard him talk at other places. He's like, I just feel this energy, which, I don't know about you, but I always base what I do based upon an energy that I'm feeling. That's how I make all my financial decisions. Anyway, my point being is that if this is so life-changing, if this is so, it's shaking your core, why are you not putting everything out on the table? Because I don't think that that's happening. Okay, regardless, so we've got, we have this, the Shemitah and the Jubilee year, none of which, the Jubilee year it might not be, this is the thing, this is what you have to understand. In the Talmud, which is just a book of arguments in Judaism, okay, you have, and I know, I've read this stuff, okay, I'm not just talking to you from some point of, I looked this up on the internet or things like this, okay, I know this shit. That's why I gave that disclaimer to explain, why I feel that I can talk about this sort of thing. Okay, now there's argument within the Talmud whether or not the Jubilee year in particular, we already said we don't know when the Shemitah is exactly supposed to be, celebrated, but the Jubilee year is it could be the 51st year. It doesn't have to be the 49th, but all of this, it being September 15, 2015, is based around the notion, and even, it relating to the 2008 collapse and to 9/11 is all based around the idea that all this stuff, happens on well-known years, which those years aren't well-known. Nobody knows. So we got that out of the way. Now, how does this all fit into 9/11? And, I've been talking about 9/11 quite a bit recently. And I had said that some people, tell me, look, I don't hear libertarians really talking about 9/11 anymore. That's not really a thing. And I said, no, you're missing it. It's the foundation of everything that they're laying out. And 9/11 is very much the foundation of this entire video, which there's a link to it in the show notes on Sovryn Tech, sovryntech.ninja. Okay, in this video, it is all totally based around the idea that 9/11, that the truth movement, that this has a lot more to do than just some terrorists, ramming planes into a building, if that even happened in and of itself, according to them. So how does the Shemitah fit in with 9/11? Well, it starts with this, and this is according to Jonathan Cahn himself, who is the guy that wrote the Harbinger, who is the originator of this entire theory that Baruch is spewing. And his point is that Senator Tom Daschle, at the time, after 9/11 happened, he quoted a verse out of Isaiah, Isaiah 9:10. And it was essentially saying, we will rebuild after what happened here. Okay. And so what the idea there is for Jonathan Cahn is that Tom Daschle made a vow to God. He made a vow. And the definition of the word vow means a solemn promise to God. Like that, that's the literal definition of the word, or at least it was a few years ago, or however many years ago. And so you are talking to God when you use the word vow. That's the idea. I know vow doesn't have to mean that now, but it meant that then. And the idea is that when Tom Daschle, was vowing, he was talking to God, and that we will rebuild. Now, the problem is that when you make a vow in the Bible, if you don't make good on that vow to God, you will get punished for it. And so the theory goes is that, a lot of these things that have been going on as late, the economic problems and other problems for America, because that's the other thing. The instant Tom Daschle said, we will rebuild, and quoted the book of Isaiah, he suddenly interlinked the destiny of America with the destiny of Israel, which many people think, is what all the, Revelation and all the other stuff is all about. And so he linked America with the end of the world by doing so. And, making that vow, if you don't make good on it, things, bad things are going to happen. But here's the issue is that, first off, it's a speculation in and of itself that Daschle was making a vow. He didn't say he made a vow. the reason that people, that Cahn says that this was a vow that was made was because in Cahn's interpretation, the verse, the moment in time that that Daschle's quoting from the Bible was in and of itself a vow. But that's not true. If you read the entire verse within its context, there wasn't a vow being made to God by any means. And at the time, because it was, during the time of Isaiah, it was a time where Israel was experiencing a lot of trouble. Okay. But that trouble did not come from the fact that they made a vow and they didn't live up to it, because the Israelites, after making the vow saying, we will rebuild, blah, 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 Solomon, yada, yada, yada. They went on with their pagan ways. It wasn't that. It was because, it didn't have anything to do with them making a vow that's why they got punished. Okay. It came from Israel's pride. Again, I'm talking from the conventional biblical perspective. I'm not talking, what I think necessarily. Okay. It came from the rebellion against God, Israel's rebellion against God, because of their idolatry. It wasn't because of a vow. So that whole verse that supposedly is the start of all of this problems, because Tom Daschle supposedly made a vow to God, whoever that God happens to be, is causing all this issue. No, it's inaccurate. It's completely inaccurate. It's not true. There is no vow to be made. So that honestly, that alone makes the entire theory of the Harbinger and the Shemitah fall completely apart. We have no idea what the dates actually are for a Shemitah. The Jubilee year cannot be practiced without its Sanhedrin or without the, all 12 tribes of Israel. And even that, like the Shemitah, we don't know what the actual year is to be celebrated or whatever. Okay. So you don't have that. Every foundation of what we're talking about just got ripped out from underneath. It's not there. And, even with the Shemitah itself, let's say somehow, because then I suppose the argument against me would be something to the effect, I'm not creating an Aunt Sally here, but, something to the effect of, Stallion, look, but they know that they want to celebrate it every 7 years, or they know they want to celebrate it every 49, or whatever. The evidence doesn't hold up to that. If you have evidence to the contrary, your claim is not so. And the evidence that I know of personally, raised as a Kohanim, I know personally that, Jews did not, even like I said with the Israeli government, they are a separate body from the Jewish religion, because they don't want to have to deal with the Shemitah. They don't want the land to stop getting produced for a year. And in fact, for thousands of years, Jews would sell off their land temporarily to Gentiles so that they could keep farming. They could keep doing the crops. They could keep the cattle going and all that. They've always found ways. The Talmud, the reason why the Talmud, okay, which is the next, one would say, in Judaism, it's part and parcel with Torah, but one would say conventionally that it's the second most important book to them. Okay. And in many ways, just as holy. All right. With the Talmud, the reason it's a book of arguments is because it's all trying to figure out how can we keep from having to follow these dumbass mitzvot? How can we keep from having to follow these laws? And that's the whole point. The evidence stands in absolute stark contrast to what's being laid out, that Jews don't want to follow that law. No one wants to follow those laws. They're crazy. I mean, maybe they made sense at one point. I'm open to that, but they don't now. Not with modern hydroponics and all this other stuff. Or even if it's about debts, none of that. The world doesn't work that way anymore. And it's all to be ignored. It's not there. The evidence is not there to say that something's going to happen. And you can't base it on some kind of energy that you're feeling. And you can't base it upon what Jonathan Cahn is saying, especially, boy, if you're a Christian, we can step out of Judaism for a second. Okay. If you're a Christian, what Jonathan Cahn is pushing with the Harbinger and with the Shemitah and all this stuff is absolute blasphemy. First off, there's no celebration anymore of this sort of thing. Not on earth. Doesn't happen. In the heavenly tabernacle described in the book of Hebrews in the New Testament, maybe. Okay. But not on earth. And so, it's bound on, earth will be in heaven. No, it's not what's bound in heaven. It gets bound on earth. It's what gets bound on earth. Okay. It ain't happening. It can't. By the book itself, by these documents itself, this stuff cannot occur. Okay, but why is Jonathan Cahn stuff anathema? He talks about in the Harbinger, like there's these 9 seals and all. So he gets into Kabbalah. Now, Kabbalah is all fine and dandy within Judaism, albeit it may be, just a medieval creation. Okay, but it's all fine and dandy within Judaism. But in Christianity, oh, no. Kabbalah, that absolutely not. Because Kabbalah is hidden knowledge. And that is not allowed in the convention, in the mainstream New Testament that we know of. I mean, if people want to get into Gnosticism and all that, that's a totally different story. Okay. But, the Christians I'm talking about that are spreading this Shemitah ideas or believing that there's going to be some kind of economic calamity on September 15th, 2015, or around there, are not Gnostics. Okay. Or at least they don't intend to be. Maybe they're, being tricked into being Gnostics. Okay, but Kabbalah is in no way. I mean, and there's a very simple verse. It's in 2 Peter. I think it's in chapter 1, where it says prophecy, scripture is not open to private interpretation. Prophecy is for everyone. It's not just for people that read the Kabbalah. And it's not open to private interpretation by Jonathan Cahn or Jeff Berwick. Now, I don't give a shit. I'm an atheist, okay? But if I am supposed to, if all this evidence that's going to change the landscape of economics and the world might even come to an end and who the hell knows what else is going to happen, if all that is based upon this document, then I am going to take your document and I am going, to find my own evidence within it. And the evidence stands is that you people are in very, Jonathan Cahn and whoever and anyone else, peddling, schlepping his stuff are the son of the devil. In the conventional sense, I'm not calling you that. I'm just saying what the Bible says. So your own book, doesn't, your own, evidentiary documents work completely against you. And the evidence of history, of decently recorded history, stands completely against everything you're saying. And it's not like, oh, well, that history was written by the Romans or something. No. This is coming from the very people that preserved the documents that you are basing your decisions upon. It's the same goddamn history. You can't separate the two and say one's bullshit and one's not. Now, let's get into the last bit of this. So anyway, like I've said, I don't think that there's going to be any kind of crazy economic collapse. I've heard it too often. And this is all end of the world stuff. Okay. That I've been hearing my whole life, be it from religion or economics or whatever, that, oh man, I mean, and you can look back and some of the books at Mises and say, oh, this is going to happen this year. This is going to happen this year. I've talked about in Sovryn Tech before. You remember Ron Paul said gold would be 5,000 in 1985. He said it would become 5,000, an ounce. Doesn't happen. Every time they predict this stuff, it doesn't occur. Does that mean it's not going to occur at some point? Well, maybe it will, but in my opinion, I don't think that it is. I think that, the force, the idea of violence and force being enacted on someone else is all the credit you need. Math and numbers be damned. So, and there's violence isn't stopping anytime soon, unfortunately, as much as I wish it would. So no, I don't see things, falling apart or whatever else. So the next part I want to get to, because then there was this bringing up of Jade Helm. This has kind of gotten interlaced with it. And Jade Helm is this, multinational government, military exercise that's being live acted in the southwestern United States, like Texas to, chunks of California, around Mexico and all that. And that started on July 15th. Just a few days ago. And in fact, Berwick released the video on July 15th to quote unquote commemorate it in a joculant way. And this is going to go on. This Jade Helm, military exercise is going to go on until September 15th, 2015, which is maybe where some of this, some of this dating comes from, of something bad's going to happen on September 15th. Now, granted, with Jade Helm, with this, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's something that's happening, but it gets conspiratorial when, like, the New York Times said, this is very strange. Why are we, why is this being done on the actual streets in all of this? And so, yeah, okay, that in and of itself, sure, I understand that bringing people pause. But as somebody who is in the U.S. military, let me assure you that these kinds of, exercises, even in real sense, maybe not to the scale, okay, that is being done with Jade Helm, the size, are done nonstop. They're done all the time. In fact, me hearing about it, and people like being concerned about it, it reminds me very much of kind of how people back with 2012. Remember 2012? Remember everybody talking about that? Ooh, I wonder what predictions were made by some people about that one. But like all the planets will align, Venus will align with this and all that. And I remember when Neil deGrasse Tyson came out and said, look, folks, Venus lines up with all these things every 2 years. This isn't anything new or major. This happens all the time. It happens like clockwork. And so what I'm saying is that a lot of these exercises, frankly, happen like clockwork. And if they're not done for real, they're certainly done, on paper. And they're war gamed even, in a digital sense. This stuff is just done all the time. This is not anything necessarily new. And so some people say, well, this is actually all a preparation for getting people used to, it's all a psyop, and people use that word in the absolute wrong way 99% of the time. But for their words, it's a psyop to get people used to seeing the military on the streets from July to September 15th. I don't think so. We talked earlier, about the military and the relationship with Hollywood. People don't need to see real soldiers on the streets to somehow get used to the idea that we, A, need a military, B, there's bad guys around, C, the military is good in God. Hollywood makes sure that happens. We talked about it. We laid it all out at the beginning of this episode. That's why I said you got to hear the whole episode. There's no need for this in this way. Now, if the U.S. military, if the government came out and said, or whatever government came out and said, all right, we're declaring martial law, very different story. But doing these exercises, I'm telling you, this is fear-mongering being peddled by these people. Even Alex Jones. In fact, this is ironic. Even Alex Jones said that Jade Helm isn't that big of a deal. This is the guy, this is the king of fear-mongers. And he's saying that, it's not that big a deal. It's just an exercise. And I agree. As someone that has taken, part in some of these exercises many years ago. Again, not on this scale, I know, but the stuff gets done. So the bottom line here is that there is no, forget nothing of like even getting into the verses in the New Testament that says nobody knows the day or the hour, and all of that. Okay. The Bible doesn't hold up with the whole, Shemitah. It doesn't hold up with what Daschle said. Everything that these ideas are based on. There's nothing, it's either not accurate or impossible to predict, or just, flat out, a lie. Or like Jade Helm, it's significantly overblown. It's fear-mongering en masse. So I hope I laid out the evidence. Like I said, normally, I've got people that I encounter in various spheres of influence that say just the wackiest things I've ever heard. And so what? Fine, you believe that? Go ahead and believe that. My concern, the reason I take this, somewhat seriously, is because, like I said, I saw the social signals, and maybe even the market signals, that people were taking this video seriously. Like that, holy shit, I need to get out of the United States. I need to buy gold. I need to do this. I need to do that. All based around, all those actions being taken seriously and being done and being based around shifting sands. There's no rock to stand on as far as these ideas go. And that's what I want when I'm making serious decisions like that. And, I did a write-up. I just want to share this quick. I did it was a write-up on the Zog blog this week. And in some ways, it was in response to this most important video ever made. Because it says, go to this website, surviveshemitah.com. And it's like, here, if you want your free document that lays out all of this, just enter your email address here. And I think that's what a lot of this might really be about. Getting your email address. Email is known to be like the number one way to get ROI, the number one way to get engagement, the number one way to sell something online. Okay. It is the penultimate way of doing that. And if you go, and this has been talked about on Sovryn Tech before. We talked about it with Chris Kresser and some others where it was very clear what was going on, that this was an email collection scheme. And if you go to that website, or if you go to any website and they tell you that, okay, first off, understand when it says free, it ain't free because you're giving them your email address. And if where they ask for your email address, if there's not, even if it's in very fine print, if it's not stated that we will not share this with any third party, we are concerned about your privacy. And you can go to places and they'll have that there. In fact, Kresser changed his policy. If you don't see that, and there's no way you're going to know if that's enforced, I understand that. But if you see that, if you don't see that phrasing, be wary. Use some kind of bullshit email address or something. Because I think that that's all about creating a list. Because what a lot of these guys can do, these online entrepreneur course guys and whatever, they will collect. And I know I've listened to them. Okay. They want to collect as many email addresses as they can. And if they get a list with like 50,000, 100,000 or however many thousands of people, they can sell that off to ad agencies for a really nice sum. Now, that doesn't mean that always gets done if somebody didn't put on, under their email collection box, to say, I'm not going to share this with a third party. And it could still happen even when they do. I understand this. Okay. But we're talking about here, when I lay this stuff out, a lot of what I talk about on Sovryn Tech is best practices. Okay. And if you are trying to tell people, if you're an anarchist and you're trying to tell people, hey, I'm not out to scam you. I'm not out to treat you, like sell you off, or I'm not here, to do whatever. Okay. I want to show you that the free market is the best and that it's concerned with human liberties and all of that. If they sell off your email address, honestly, I don't think they're concerned with your human liberties. That's just running into so many problems. You consider what ad agencies will put on you, HTML versions, of emails that could have, or links to various things. You look at all the spam email. Spam email is such a serious problem because it's a huge security risk. And if you are selling off email lists to, ad agencies or companies, that, whatever that may be, maybe it's not even an ad company, maybe it's just a full-on company of some, some product or whatever, then you just put in danger all those people with the email address. I'm not against, and I think email lists and all that and, email marketing and you take your pick. I think it's a far better thing than social media. Please don't misunderstand me. Okay. And I'm not saying it's always bad. I got to be clear on this. Okay. But you got to watch out. And a lot of times with a lot of these guys, I'm not just saying, that it's Berwick or whoever, but I'm saying be wary in the liberty community. I've talked about the Libertarian Republic and all those other sites that just, they all do clickbaity stuff, fear mongering stuff, or numbered lists or whatever the case may be, anything to get you to go where they want you to go and to get the information that they want from you, to get, ad impressions or whatever else. Don't fall for this shit anymore. Please don't. And I don't think, and again, just let's be clear on this with the Shemitah. If there's more information to be had, it should be freely put out there if such a goddamn terrible thing is going to happen to everybody. How dare you have to put extraneous information into some paper that you can only get from an email address? Fine. Let's say you want to keep people updated. Well, then just tell them, please continue to visit the website. We have a blog here and we're going to put all the information on a blog. We're not going to give it away via email. Okay. Because if you are going to do it through email, I can only think one thing: that you're trying to sell me something or sell me. Now, I know I've been going long here, okay, and I don't want to go much longer, but I just want to take a moment, what exactly is being sold? Because, fear really does sell. It's like sex. It sells. We talked earlier in the episode about how death, may be the motivator for everything, okay, and I said, well, sex might be the better one, but for whatever reason, fear really does sell. This fear of death definitely does sell. And, I want to take a moment to really, look, I get it. Like I said, I was a Christian. I was raised, I accepted Judaism for a while. And then later on, it was Christianity. Okay. And I understand. And the reason I got back into Christianity later on in life was because, I had to make sense of the world and I was afraid in my life. I was in the military. My life was terrible. The things I was doing was terrible. They were terrible. And I think that's the key of where a lot of this goes. I mean, and I stayed a Christian for a little while after I got married, and I'm not one for marriage. Anybody that's listened to Sovryn Tech long, knows how I feel about relationships, and marriage is not part of the program for me. And, all that time I was still latching very much on, to these end time prophecies and all this stuff in the Bible and everything. And I can really understand because, because I think what was happening for me was that my life sucked. And so I wanted everybody else's life to suck. Oh yeah, I'm having a bad day. Everybody's going to have a bad day. My finances or whatever's, in the shithole for me, or my family life's in the shithole for me, or whatever the case may be, everybody's is going to be bad. So the world is going to end. The economy is going to fall. All is going to go down. I think that's what happens. I think that's the appeal. And I feel really, I feel a lot of empathy for anybody that's going through that. But look, life doesn't, you're in control of your life. God isn't. There's no puppeteer pulling the strings. You can change the outcome. There's so many fears that are absolutely legitimate. But then there's fears that just have no basis in fact, no basis in reality. And we really, humans have to start dissecting these things so that they can get to the core of what's really going on. Because I think a lot of people's fear over the Shemitah or Jade Helm or whatever else is really just coming from the fact that maybe their life isn't where they want it. And so they want to either dissociate from it, or they want to re-inflict the trauma, re-experience the trauma, and re-inflict it on everybody. So in this case, well, what do we have here? And in this case, with this supposed economic advice, well, it's a bunch of Shemitah. It is. It's all, there's no foundation for it. None of it. Even if you're an atheist and you're using their own books and their own documents, none of it. It's not real. Anyway, if you disagree, head to Zog.Ninja. You can let me know. Carpe Lucem, everybody. I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.